Greetings! Nihilist here to talk more about So this is a video on how part of the system works, and that is the life system. So in things like D&D, Pathfinder, whatever else, you get like a set amount of gold that to start off with based on your class or whatever. Some games have a more lifestyle-based thing like Burning Wheel. And this system is influenced by Burning Wheel, but I'm going to be trying to make it not so complicated. And so each species will have their own kind of start, which is your birth. So if you are human or dwarf or elf or whatever else, you will have a list of kind of your birth, your starting. Some of them will be, you were born into a human civilization, you were born into a different species of civilization. And so, then in that case you pick one from that species list. Later in time, in the more modern eras of Ulm, the births will be much more muddled, as the societies of the different species will be much more integrated with each other. But in the more medieval times, especially like pre-God War times, each of the species kind of had their own civilizations, and they were usually stuck more or less to themselves. And so you have your birth, and then you have the age of development, which is your early childhood into the preteens, and that you will have a list to pick from that is much more universal, kind of like how you developed, like what path your life took you. It's a much more overarching kind of a thing. And then third is the age of learning, right? Yes, the age of learning. Basically, where you went after you kind of grew up a bit. Did you go to school? Did you go to military? Did you become a merchant? Were you part of a royal family? Were you part of a noble family? These kinds of things. And your birth and your age of development kind of lead into your age of learning, and what you choose for your birth limits which paths of the age of development you can take, and then your age of development that you take limits which age of learning that you can take. And then when the game starts, when your campaign begins, your story begins, is considered the fourth age of your character, which is the age of adventure, because it's an adventure game. It doesn't have to be an adventure game. It could be a diplomatic, political intrigue kind of a story. It could be, normal people story. So it could be kind of boring. But, it can be whatever you want it to be at the age of adventure. That's when the game starts. It's the age of adventure. And so, the ages of learning and development do not strictly determine your character's age in years. They simply give you kind of a time-ish. Like, you can, start as like a kid. It would be actually suggested for the narrator of the game that if you're starting as, a kid, then you probably haven't made it to the age of learning. You're probably still in the age of development. So that would be like an exception, is if you're a child, you're not going to have the age of development, or the age of learning. But the age of learning can be from like your teen years up until like a war vet if you want. You can go out and be like, my age of learning was when I was 18, I joined the military, and I've been kind of a foot soldier traveling the world and wherever the military took me until I was like the age of 60, and then I had an arrow to the knee, and went out of the military to become an adventurer because they didn't want me anymore. And maybe your training wasn't especially great, you know, and so during that entire time you became a bit grizzled. You know, you survived a long time as a soldier on the battlefield, but you know, now you're becoming an adventurer. Now is when you're truly developing away from the military as a hero of legend. Yeah, that's kind of a gist on how the life paths will work. Oh, what do they determine in-game, you're probably thinking? Your life paths determine how much money you start off with. That's a big thing. What kind of equipment you're going to have access to. So, like, if none of your paths lead you into a military-based life or a fighting-based life of some way, like you were a noble who wanted to be a merchant, you know, you're probably not going to have access to a lot of the different types of armor or swords, you know. In certain ages, you'll have access to, like, you know, maybe you have a rapier, and maybe you have, like, a leather jacket that can provide some protection, you know, but you're not going to be a fully fledged knight. And now, these aren't going to be strict limitations. It's just, like, if you've gone through these paths, this is the set of equipment that is common for your station in life to have. I mean, if you wanted to be a merchant that owns a set of plate mail, okay, you can be a merchant who owns a set of plate mail. What the fuck ever. You bought a set of plate mail. Good job. And I mean, you could have been a military guy that, you know, all you ever got was like some padded leather, and you have a spear and a sword. That's all you ever got, even though the military has basically been your life. You just never really saw battle. You were never really well equipped or whatever. And then, you know, I'm eventually going to have it so that the life paths will give you some starting stuff. Like, if you're noble, you will have a set of clothing that shows your stature. You will have a home that is big and glorious. You will have servants. You will have people that you know. You will have connections. You know, the royal life will set you up with that. And then the other thing that the life paths will do is give you a list of suggested skills, kind of a guide of, like, somebody who went through these paths in life, on average, is going to have these sets of skills. Again, it's not rules on, these are the skills you have to take. It's just, these make sense. But if you have a great story, do whatever fucking skill set you want. Because that's my thing with this kind of stuff, is the biggest thing is that it's going to give you some story advantages in having, like, connections or a place to live or whatever else, and it's going to determine how much money you have to start. But all the other stuff is simply guidelines to help flesh out your character, to give you a story and a background and interesting things about your character. You know, if you have this amazing story and these are the life paths that kind of fit and make sense to what you're going to do, you can do whatever the hell you want, fits what your character's going to be. You know, these are simply to try to inspire better character development and roleplay. Because that's what I want this game to be all about, is story. It's got to be a great story. It's not going to be a game that's about the hack and slashy whatever, which is why there's a lot of social skills, a lot of non-combat skills, is to be like help with story stuff. Yep.